Thank you, Mark. Yeah, hi everybody. Good to be here with you. I just noticed myself sighing as a way of easing in. The Talmud tells us that sighing softens the body. It's like, letting yourself land a little bit, letting the out breath be just a little bit longer than it usually is, inviting the body to drop downward somewhat, meet the earth, take your seat. It's said that the Torah reaches out to us, finds some way, week after week and year after year, of offering us what we need, meeting us where we are. I've really been struck by this in the very, very challenging times of the last few weeks. And as we turn to the fourth parsha, the fourth portion of the book of Genesis, often known as Vayera by its first word, I'm really struck once again. We could say it's a blockbuster this week. So many of our deeply significant events taking place in this week's portion. The angels visiting Avraham and Sarah, bringing them news that they couldn't dare to hope for. The reckoning with the barbarity and depravity of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Avraham's attempt to relate with compassion even to this. His cousin Lot and Lot's wife, and how hard it is for her, for us all to look away, to look elsewhere, to avoid the tug of what is loudest and most challenging in our experience. The Akedah, the being called to do what is seemingly impossible, as Avraham is, to sacrifice his son. And his response, his famous response, Hineni, here I am. Not, oh yes, that will be easy, or I know exactly what to do, or no problem, but just, here I am. So there's so much in this week's parsha. I just wanted to touch some of it. I think it's really great that there's an IJS sit each day of the week, because you have just that little bit more time to unpack the riches of the Torah this week. So much in the parsha, and so much happening in our world right now, as we'll all know. But in the spirit of simplicity, let's just take our lead from just the very first pasuk, the very first sentence of this week's portion. And Jet will share the source sheet at the end, so you'll have this, but it reads, Vayera elav yutevav he be'elonei mamrei, v'hu yoshev petach ha'ohel kachom hayom. And the divine appeared to them in the oaks of Mamre, a place. And he, and that's Avraham, sat at the entrance, the opening of the tent in the heat of the day. A huge amount of interpretation and explanation of this powerful verse. The Me'or Einayim, the Chernobyl Rebbe, makes a fascinating point. He says, why does it say the divine appeared a love to them, not to Avraham? And his explanation is that this is because the verse is only in one sense talking about Avraham. It's deliberately generic because it is in fact to everyone that the divine shows the divine space. And that this happens when? Kachom Hayom, in the heat of the day, when it's most oppressive, most challenging. To everyone, to each of us, the divine reveals Elone Mamre. Again, the Me'orenayim in the word Mamre, which is conventionally translated as the name of a place, sees the word Hamra'ah, this word which means great turmoil, rebellion, strife. Elone Mamre, the oaks, the possibility of finding something sturdy and stable, even in Hamra'ah, even in the midst of the turmoil, even in the intensity of the heat of the day. So I want to share a couple of practices with you to explore them together that do this for me, that help me to find some sturdiness, some oak-like quality in the midst of turmoil, that help me to recognize the ways in which the divine is revealing itself to me, even in the most oppressive, the hottest, most intense period of the day. And actually, I'm coming back with you next Monday, and I'm going to share some more then. A range of different sources of support that help me and I hope may be helpful for you too. So I invite you to begin by finding a posture, some balance of uprightness, dignity, wakefulness on the one hand, and also ease, softening, relaxing, allowing, letting the very posture that you adopt express this balance of bright and relaxed. Noticing if you're leaning particularly in one or the other direction and just finding some balance of the two, some harmony. And then I invite you to let the eyes be open and look around the room that you're in. And let the eyes settle on 5 different objects, one by one. And with each object that your eyes come to rest on, pausing with it, naming it, whispering the name inwardly, and then just taking an extra breath or two to let the vision land, to take in the sight. Doesn't have to be a special object at all. Water bottle, pen, mouse, photo, blind, whatever. But just one by one, pausing, naming, receiving. And then moving on to a second object, up to 5. Maybe one behind you, taking in the space. Pausing, naming, receiving, one by one. And then returning to center, letting the eyes close if that's comfortable for you. I often find bringing my chin just a little closer to the chest helps to open up the back of the neck. And now I invite you to do the same, but with sound. 4 sounds, receiving them one by one, naming it, receiving it. Of course, you don't control how long it sticks around for, but even if it's just brief, lingering with the echo, And then listening out for another sound up to 4. And now we come to the sense of touch. And I invite you to begin here by turning attention to the sensations of the ground, not just the idea of the ground, but the sensations through which it shows up in your immediate experience. The pressure of the soles of the feet on the floor, or the bottom on the chair or cushion, whatever you're sitting on. The ground pressing up into you, just as you are pressing down into it, meeting you and holding you. As best you can, receiving these physical sensations pressing up into the body. Letting yourself rest on this vast solidity, home of the Shekhinah, the divine spirit in the Kabbalistic imagination. Receiving the ground, resting on it. Nothing is too heavy for the ground. And then how about 2 other points of contact where you feel the body touching something, clothes or breeze, or one part of the body touching another. And with these 2, pausing, naming, receiving. And then finally, one smell or one taste or one of each. I invite you now to return to one of these sensations, a sight, a sound if it's still available, a sensation of contact, of touch, or smell, or taste. One which had some texture of pleasantness to it. Doesn't have to be much, could just be mild, but one which comes to mind when I say the word pleasantness, even if it's not really clear why or how, just turning to one sensation that you just took in through whichever sense door, and just spending a little longer with this one. Maybe the eyes open if it's a sight. Receiving the sensation, whatever it may be, and also in particular the quality of pleasantness, however subtle, inviting that too to land and spread to whatever extent it does. not grabbing at the pleasantness, but not turning away from it either. Perhaps you choose to continue with giving attention to the pleasant sensation. And perhaps now you choose to turn attention somewhere else, the hands or the feet, the breath or the sounds around you. Wherever you choose to turn the gaze of the mind, perhaps continuing to plug into the sensory domain, to remember that as well as all the thoughts and emotions, there's also this whole field of sensory experience, immediate, wordless, present. And we can turn here and rest here for a time, however often we choose. So within it all, where do you choose to turn attention right now? Just making that choice. Maybe tasting the simplicity of just giving attention to this one thing for now. In the background, there's room for everything. We don't have to tidy any of that up. The simplicity is in the intention, just to keep turning back to this one place of your choosing for now. Again and again, each time we drift or forget, we just turn back again. And seeing if this simple observing can be infused with the spirit of allowing what you're observing to be as it is, to unfold as it does from one moment to the next. And letting this allowing spread also through the experience. What's in the background too is allowed to be where it is. Observing and allowing. As we sit here, wherever you're sitting, you're participating in something larger and wider and deeper than yourself. Others around the world sitting with you, those here and beyond. All of us fellow recipients of the appearance of the divine. All of us named in that verse as the one to whom the divine appears. All of us, through our practice, sharing the intentions to touch into peacefulness and healing and love by whatever names we name it. We're moved to draw our practice to a close by dedicating any benefits that may arise to those caught in the horror and the tragedy of conflict. May all the hostages return home safely. May the mourners be comforted. May the wounded find healing. May everyone, everywhere, receive what they need. May each of us touch stability and clarity, even in the heat of the day, even in the turmoil of pain and loss, even on the plains of Mumray. May there be peace, Bimhera Vyamenu, speedily and in our days.
Amen. Thank you, Zac, for that extraordinary teaching and practice, essential teaching and practice. We seal that practice and invite people to stay present for our close. The way we seal our practice each day is by offering an opportunity for mourners to say the mourner's Kaddish. So if you're a mourner, if you're observing a yard site, if it's your custom to join, you're welcome to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, you're invited simply to stay present and offer your kind attention and your compassionate support for those who are. You're invited to put the name or names of those you're honoring in the chat now or after you recite the Kaddish. And Jet, thanks so much for sharing the words on the screen. And if you're reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Yamad librach v'chute, v'yechon yamechu, v'yetachol beit el, v'agala v'zman kariv, Ru. Rabba mivarach lam ulamein, Atar v'yitam v'yitzvi, Hadar v'yitalal, Ulamin, Birkat v'shmata, Da'amiram ba'alma binru, Amen. Shlama Rabba min Shamaya, Imalenu v'yachol binru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, Yaseh shalom leinu v'yalko Yisrael, v'yalko
Much to
Yoshvei
encourage
Tevel,
you
Mru,
because
Amen.
around is this getting more and more difficult.
Amen.
Yeah.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. for this really beautiful teaching and practice by Zac Newman of Hamakom. If you're leaving us now, we'll hope you join us for any of the sessions this week. Tomorrow will be led in practice by Rabbi Jordan Ben-Dad-Appel, Wednesday, Rabbi Denny Marshall, on Thursday, Kimberly Duenas of Jutina Eco, and on Friday, Cantor Louise Treitman. And just a reminder, as Zac mentioned, he'll be back next Monday to lead us in practice. And also through Hamakom, Zac is leading what in the UK are morning and evening sessions starting in November. If you happen to be awake in the middle of the night in the US, early morning, some of us may find ourselves, you might be interested in the morning sessions. The evening sessions in the UK, of course, will be in the afternoon here in the Eastern US. Thanks so much, Jet, for putting the link to that. And as always, you're welcome to stay on for conversation, for questions about today's teaching with Zac Newman, and or just to share reflections in the chat about your experience with the practice today. Thanks to Jet Bachman for holding our space, as always, with lots of skill and grace, and we wouldn't be able to do that without that support. So grateful to you, Jet. Thank you so much. Zac, really can't thank you enough. That was really just beautiful, and a lot of appreciation in the chat. I have two questions. I will keep an eye on the chat. If folks do have a question for Zac, please put it in the chat and preface it by writing question in all caps if possible. Well, first of all, I was just blown away by looking at all the relevance of this week's Torah portion. So many different aspects of it is kind of overwhelming. And I really appreciated you zeroing in on the very beginning of Abraham sitting at the entrance of the tent, Kachom Hayom, in the heat of the day. And that's exactly where we are. And that he situates himself petach ha'ohel at the opening of the tent, right? He doesn't shield himself, doesn't retreat into the tent, and he's not out in the tent. He's in that liminal space between inner and outer, and maintaining awareness of both. And then that practice that you offered of beginning by lifting our eyes and looking at and naming and beholding 5 objects in the room, so powerful, so necessary, and struck me actually that it connects directly with what happens at the beginning of the Parsha, where Abraham lifts his eyes, sees, and beholds. By Yisa Einav, he lifts his eyes, but it's not just he lifts his eyes, he opens them and he actually beholds. And I just thought that was a beautiful description of that practice. So I'll share a little bit of what came up for me, because I thought, oh, this is so what I need right now. And at the same time, I felt, because I am feeling, whatever I'm feeling so intensely, and I imagine others are as well, there was a piece of me that was resisting it, that came up. That's, it's almost as if each of those practices, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, the sensations, were geared to restoring a sense of safety in the moment. And there's a part of me that was sort of a counter voice that's saying, no, the alarm is sounding. Don't turn the alarm off. So I wonder if you might address that, when we are feeling under duress, feeling, as many are, vulnerable on a profound level. And we have these practices to help us stay present, to cultivate that hineni state that you're describing that Abraham has. Just like, I don't have the answers. All I know is that I'm here, right? I'm not looking for answers. I'm just here. What can we do with that resistance? So what's your advice about that?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The first thing that I am reminded of is this feeling that I have very regularly, which is that when I sit down to meditate, or even in a smaller way, when I just pause and slow down even fractionally, often the first feeling that I get is is not like, oh, so nice to stop and be still and how lovely. The beginning, the very first thing is often like there's all the stuff that I've sort of been holding at bay while
Mm-hmm.
I busy myself with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I slow down, it begins to rush in, and it's like it's kind of nauseating. It's like, whoa, whoa. And I mean, I've been doing this a fairly long time, but that first moment continues to often have that kind of quality. That which is another way I think of describing what you were experiencing, that the turn into immediate sensory experience, although it can be incredibly healing and there's so much safety there, as you were saying, it initially feels like, wow, it's all quite raw, it's all quite up close, and for all sorts of reasons, we want to get away. I think the thing that helps me the most is just getting familiar with that. Like I say, it still happens to me. Shifting from a busier, probably more thought-oriented, more doing-oriented mode into one that's more sensory, that's
Mm-hmm.
slower, that's more about being rather than doing. That transition isn't always an easy one. But the more that I just know the nausea, the discomfort of it, the less of a problem it feels. And the deeper my trust that, this wave that comes does what all waves do, which is it's like, well, it feels quite overwhelming, and then it dissipates. And on the other side is connectedness and presence and softness. Especially if, as that resistance comes, as you were describing, I'm able to not react too strongly to it. I'm able to see it, to know it. I don't have to get rid of it, but I also can just kind of stay steady. Okay, it doesn't feel great right away, but I can stick with my practice. And if I do it enough, I trust more and more and more that, or I come to know more and more and more that, yeah, this is a kind of initial feeling. It comes, it goes, and it's worth it.
I'm looking to see. There's a lot of appreciation. Thanks, Andrew, for Andrew's. I always visualize Abraham standing just inside the open flap of the tent, some shadow and protection from the full heat of midday. You might say that that's what we're doing in this practice, right? That we're in that shadow of protection from the full heat, but not hiding from it. Also,
Mm,
I want to
yeah.
dig a little bit deeper into that, because what you say is really true, Zach. And for those who've been on meditation retreats, what you're describing often is like what happens on day one or day two, right? Of that real, everything that's been, as you said, held at bay or repressed comes up, and it's not so pleasant, at all. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into this sense of feeling safe and secure in the midst of, without invalidating the sense of vulnerability. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to this myself. I think this is just what is coming up for me, and I'm imagining that maybe it's coming up for others, is that sense of profound vulnerability. And that's that sort of signal that's coming in at that moment that does, in fact, make me feel kind of nauseated and physically really uncomfortable, heartache. And what you started with, the sigh, which, by the way, I completely relate to. I'm a big sigher. and that does seem to me also to be an acknowledgement of the anxiety. It's just kind of, it is an expression. It's the closest thing I can come up with that's an expression of what I'm really feeling. A deep sigh, an oi, right? A deep, that is because it seems it's true, and it gives expression to it, and it allows it to move along a little bit. So I guess I'm wondering about that. If the combination works, the combination works well for me. That maybe if I experience that sense of fear that's still lurking, I can acknowledge it. Not, and said, like, really the issue is not to push that away or repress it, right? But to give it its space. How do we do, how we do that? So I'm just raising that as a question. Like as I was thinking out loud, I'm thinking, oh, I could sigh there. That would be good.
Yeah.
It does help. How about you? How about sighing? What does sighing do for you?
Yeah, and I'm finding myself just bringing a hand to my chest as well, as you invited us just before we began, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in both the sigh, and in the just like soothing touch, hand on the chest or the belly, sometimes even under the shirt,
Oops.
right? Just letting the skin on skin contact. There's a kind of wisdom and emunah, right? A trust, a faith woven in that's like, yeah, this is hard, and I'm big enough. I'm spacious enough. I can allow that it's hard. I can go, oh gosh, oh dear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can let it be hard. I can let the wave crash. I can let it be, at least initially, nauseating. I'm not going to collapse, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to let it. I don't have to pretend otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in that sigh, I really feel a wisdom that's like, it's hard. We move between modes. We're here and then we're there, and the transitions are often, to at
Right.
least some extent, difficult.
Right. I guess maybe also, Zach, because I've been focusing on the fear aspect of it, of feeling vulnerable, but then there's also the grief. I'm thinking about this practice you offer today. I'm thinking, oh, now I'm thinking about, like, when someone is lost in grief, maybe in Shiva, or like in intense grief, right? Where the grief needs to be acknowledged, and there's no escape from it, right? And one might feel like one's going to drown in grief, right? It's going to kill me. I can't survive this grief. That there needs to be some room to acknowledge that, right? And as you say, like, it's almost inexplicable about the capacity to be with that and not be obliterated by it, which I think so many of us are at various degrees, or feeling, or the ways in which it affects us directly, indirectly. So bringing grief as well as anxiety. People were saying dread, sense of dread, terror, fear, but there's also sadness, pain, right?
Hmm.
All of it goes into the mix. It doesn't. I'm not in any way, shape, or form like negating that practice. Like, it really was so helpful and healing. And I'm also trying to think about, like, what else was, what was that? Why was there a part? There's a part of me that's saying yes, thank you, thank you. There's a part of me that's saying, oh, but what about? But what about? Don't forget. And so
Hmm.
that's. I just want to. I just, for myself, I'm acknowledging that. And what you're saying is really helpful. Also, like, the wordless sigh, music too. Of course, I think the nigun, word, the sigh, expression, or
Yeah.
or silence, even, really, right? Silence. Mira, our teacher Mira Nishamawa was just talking last week about the importance of silence too, right?
Hmm. And in all of these, I feel that they're not neutral. Even silence, even just allowing, even just recognizing and naming and speaking it out as you are doing. Already within that, there's the possibility that it's okay to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We can acknowledge how it is.
Mm-hmm.
We can let that in and speak it out, and we won't die. We won't collapse.
Mm-hmm.
We'll still be able to take it. The Sfat Emet, the Hasidic master, talks about our infinite inwardness, doors within doors. Like there's a lot of space. We can let ourselves feel what we feel, and there's room for the full range, the full diversity, the full catastrophe of
Mm-hmm.
human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
There's room for all of it. None of it has to be reconciled or compromised or equated or prioritized. It's all here.
Mm-hmm. It's a big guest house. It's a very large guest house. Zac, I want to thank you. It was just an exquisite practice today. Really, kol hakavod. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad you'll be back in a week to lead us again. I'll just note before we leave that I see in the chat also people are mentioning anger also as like one more emotion that's present for people. And I'm thinking about what you said about in the Parsha, we also have Abraham shaking his fist, at God and basically getting in God's face and saying, how dare you, expressing anger in that way. So there's room for all of those feelings, the grief, the fear, the anger, even in the midst of it all, joy and gratitude also as well. So again, thank you so much, Zac. Really so grateful to you for this. And thanks to Jet for holding our space. Thanks to all of you. We had at least 260 people here gathered to practice together. What an incredible gift that we need right now. So friends, I want to thank you for being here, and also let people know if they're looking, if they're struggling, let them know that they have a opportunity, they have a home here, and the opportunities that Hamakom is offering with Zac, that there are important opportunities for us to be able to engage in this practice together. Zac, be well, and we'll see you next week. And many blessings to you and to all of you here. And we hope to see you tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Jordan Ben